the Ease of Business podcast for the enlightened entrepreneur, hosted by Lisa Schermerhorn and Celeste Hartwell. Here is where we help disruptors gain clarity on how to make a bigger impact while living a life of abundance through reading amazing books that have helped us in business. Thanks so much for joining us, and let's get into it. Welcome to the Ease of Business podcast. My name is Celeste Hartwell, and I have the amazing, beautiful Lisa Schermerhorn with me. Good evening, Lisa.
Good evening, and thank you. I always love this. I look forward to this every month. It's so much fun.
It is a lot of fun. So tonight is really fun because it's the month of Valentine's Day. It's the month of love. And so we're talking about the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. I love it.
There
So
we
for
go.
anybody watching us on YouTube, you can see the copy of the book that Lisa's holding up. And this book is by Gary Chapman and Dr. Paul White. And if you're familiar with anything else with Gary Chapman, he also wrote The 5 Love Languages, which was a really brilliant book for me. But Lisa, this was your suggestion, which I think was beautiful and really profound for the month of February. So I'd love to hear, like, what were your big takeaways, and like, how did you, I mean, I feel like we can talk a lot for this, but I'm curious, to jump us off.
Well, I read the book, The Five Love Languages, years ago, and I found it so profound because one of the things that I discovered was that I was my ex-husband was an acts of service guy. And and for me, I'm more about words of affirmation. And so he would be changing my oil and my car and doing all these wonderful things that I just thought he liked doing them. Like, because my language was different than his, I just thought he liked doing all that stuff around the house, but that was the way he showed love. And it didn't come up until much later on because I was our languages were so different, and I realized how profound that was in a relationship. And then when I saw the five languages of appreciation in the workplace, I was like, oh my God, this is really important. And what's interesting is I'm good friends with a fellow who helps people buys and sells inns, and he does these workshops all the time. And I was telling him about this book, and he said, do you realize that all of my clients, or the majority of them, are couples and they work together? He said, this is really going to be important information for people who literally work together and live together almost 24 hours a day. So I did this workshop for them, and they just loved it. And
Mm.
there's so much information to learn and to know about the individuals who you work with. Even if you're an entrepreneur and you only have a few people, or you have a large company, I think it's really important to know what people's language is, so that you know how best to retain them. I was reading in the book, and I'm sure it's a lot more than this, because they talk about the Great Resignation, but they were talking about how job satisfaction, lack of job satisfaction, costs over $5 trillion to businesses in the workplace because
It's
of
wild.
attrition. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how many
And
times do you
low
find
work
people?
performance too, right? Like, people
Yeah.
not being really engaged in their work makes it so that they're just not as efficient as they could be.
And it's not about the money, because if
Right.
someone is working and they don't feel appreciated, they don't feel like their work is being acknowledged, they'll leave. It's more important than the money, which was also surprising. There are people who will take less money for a job when they feel appreciated.
Or to feel like they part of something, like building something. There was also like purpose in that. And yeah, this book was really fascinating to me. I'm so grateful that you brought it up because it was so interesting to A, revisit the five love languages. So, for any listeners who are not familiar with five love languages, they are acts of service where somebody does something for other people. And sometimes we think that that's the way that we accept love. We like people to do things to us. And so, in the example of Lisa, your husband, clearly thought that that was how he showed love for you. And it actually wasn't your love language, but it was clearly his. Like, it was likely his, I should say, not clearly, but likely his. And so there's acts of service, there's words of affirmation, as you had mentioned, Lisa, which is like, you're doing amazing. Oh my God, you look great. I really appreciate your work on this. There is, yeah, girl.
Quality time.
Yes, quality time where we're like spending time with people, we're really present. There's touch, physical touch, which they talk about how that can be a little bit key in the workplace. And
Yes.
then what was the last
Tangible
one?
gifts, tangible
Thank you.
gifts.
Yep,
But when we
tangible
get to Yeah, I'm sorry. But when we get to the physical touch, that is a real problem in the workplace because you have to be very, very careful. If you're a touchy-feely person, even like I see clients one-on-one in my office, and I'm a hugger. I
Yep.
love to hug. And so I have had to learn to ask, would you like a hug? I always have to ask permission.
Yeah, and yeah, not even, I don't know if it's permission necessarily. It can be perceived as permission, but just like respectfulness, right? Like just respecting person. I know that I grew up very touchy-feely as well, and I have a particular friend, since I was in high school who does not want to be touched. And for a long time, like, I demonized that. Like, that's weird. Like, why don't you want to, like, just touch? And now I'm like, God, I wish I wouldn't have given her so much crap. That's just not her thing. Like, it is clearly like
Right.
acts of service, words of affirmation. There's other things for her that are really, really important. And I loved how in this book they go deeper into, not only is there an assessment that Gary Chapman and Dr. Paul have created for people to be able to go into, but then like deeper with employees or people around us and being like, okay, so if it's tangible gifts, what do they like? Right? Like going a little bit deeper into, okay, so maybe it's tickets to a game, like their favorite team, instead of some corporate branded stuff that they had left over from a trade show, right?
No, it's exactly. Everything has to have meaning. If you're just doing it for a gratuitous reason, it's not going to come off. Don't, if someone who likes, gifts, don't give them a mug.
Right.
You want to find out what their favorite band is. What kind of music do they like? Do they like to certain types of restaurants? So as a reward for doing a good job, you can give someone, a gift certificate for a restaurant, or if someone likes massages, asking, and then the reward of feeling appreciated. Oh, they remembered me. Wow.
Yep.
None of They
Yep.
asked, and then they thought enough to give me this kind of a gift. And that's the part that's really important. Like with quality time, they talk about you if you walk into someone's office and they're really busy and you come in to ask a question and the boss is sitting down, they're typing and they're multitasking and you're trying to have a conversation with someone, especially someone who that's really important to, you're going to really upset them. You need to stop what you're doing, look them in the eye, give them your full attention so that they feel that they are seen and heard. Where's
That is so true. And sorry, it feels like maybe my Wi-Fi is shoddy, so I apologize for that. I don't know how to fix that.
Yeah, there's a delay.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Um, so the other thing that I really enjoyed about this too was that they were so clear about only do anything of appreciation if it is genuine, if it is authentic. Like, only do it if you mean it, right? Like, again, like the intentionality behind it and really making sure that it's not coming off as, well, I'm gonna you know, give a gift or do something of appreciation for my employee just to like get them to work harder, right? Like people can feel whether this is genuine or not. And so I loved how that was like threaded throughout the entire book.
Well, what's funny with acts of service is that for someone who it's important for acts of service, if you ask someone to do something for you, if you're going to do something for someone, you have to do it the way they want it done. You can't just go in there and do it and say, "Hey, I helped." You have to go in there and say, "How do you want this done?" and do it the way they want. Otherwise, don't bother because you're just going to piss them off. And
Right,
and yeah.
and to also have them, like, be clear about what your boundaries are for time in order to be able to help someone else, right? Like, not just saying, "Sure, I can help you with that," and then falling off and not having the time to actually complete the project, right? Not being clear about boundaries and what you can actually help with in the beginning.
Yeah, I had in part of the talk that I did with the innkeepers, it was really interesting because there was one couple and she was an acts of service person. And the other thing is that her husband came in and did this huge project for her, but didn't do it exactly the way she wanted it, but he didn't ask. And so we had to have a conversation about her not criticizing him because you want him to want to do that again. So there's a balance there too,
Yep.
because he had to learn to ask what she wanted and she had to learn to bite her tongue.
Yeah, for sure, and I think yeah, I can't imagine having a couple relationship and something like that. That would add more intricacies to the relationship and the dynamic for sure. That is it's fascinating. The physical touch thing I thought was interesting when they brought it up, and of course, they were very tentative about it, and they did include it because it is a language of love and appreciation. But I loved how they were like, depending on the person, depending on the relationship, like you had mentioned, Lisa, like asking, "Is it okay if I hug you?" or a high five, right? Like an elbow bump, a fist pump, like something. Maybe that person does like to like have a hand on the shoulder in a non-sexual way. But just to, like really knowing that person well enough, I think caring about that relationship deeply enough uh in order to be able to give that. And then what I really like too is that they talked about how different and languages of appreciation can shift with what's going on in someone's life, right? Like if there's a family illness, if there's a catastrophic event happening, maybe all of a sudden like their language of appreciation was words of affirmation, but now, like, bringing food, tangible gifts, acts of service in a crisis can actually cement a relationship even further and really help out, the cohesiveness of the team as well.
It's funny because one of the things that had come up when I was talking about this to other people is also be aware if you're a visitor to, a certain city or whatever. There's certain cultures where you don't touch either. They're not huggy. Like I lived in the Boston area for years and people would freeze up because I was such a hugger. And people I found for the most part, that's not everyone, but there are a lot of people who are not very into physical touch. So I had to learn to kind of back off. And whereas maybe down south, you have to expect a hug everywhere you go. So you want to be aware of your geography.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. I think that's such a great point. And then just realizing that everybody grows up differently, right? Like, everyone has a different relationship with physical touch.
Yeah, and it's interesting, starting out where they talk about words of affirmation. It's not about just, hey, you did a good job. You want to be really specific. Like, hey, I love the way you worked on that project. You were really optimistic and you're very outgoing. And I like that way how you engaged people. Or in other words, if you have someone who's an introvert, say, hey, you know what? I love the way you observe, because when you finally do speak up or when you finally take action, that's a wow. And so saying things like that where you get specific. Don't throw out gratuitous information, or comments to people, because they are not, people can tell when it's not genuine.
Yeah, I love that you're making that point because it's so true. Like, we need to, again, have more intention. And like, I I appreciate when you XYZ because it's XYZ, right? Like, because it helped me out, it did this, it did that. Like, and really giving solid feedback instead of thanks, like,
No, it's true. And then on the second one with quality time, part of that is also being aware of people's emotions, their feelings. Be observant with body language. Pay attention if you're talking to someone and you see that they're emotional, or they're starting to get upset. It's important to be aware of people. And that's with anyone anyway, but we get so busy at work and we kind of take the emotion out of it. But we are humans, and we're
mhm.
human beings, and we need to be treated as such. When you take the humanity out at work, then you leave people really unhappy.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say for myself, like, I know going back, like, when I went through a really rough time in my early 20s in my first corporate position, I was going through this and I did not have a lot of money. My coworkers rallied around me, right? Really like made sure that we were ordering in food on Fridays, that I was able to take the leftovers home so that I have to spend any extra money, right? Like, it is about the relationships. And so I've often said, like, I loved the people that I worked with in corporate. They were my family. Like, spent more time with them than I did anyone else, right? Now, being an entrepreneur, it's a little bit different, but I still think that this is valuable information for when we're hiring in teams, when we're running volunteer events and we're managing volunteers. Like, no matter what it looks like, even if it's just a contractor on Fiverr, etc., like, it's making sure that giving appreciation in the way that people really uh that people really feel touched and understand that it's genuine, and also cultivating that relationship, making that relationship deeper. And yeah, we can't touch each other through the computer. A lot of us are very remote right now, but just, doing what we can in other ways.
But you know what? It can also be used when you're an entrepreneur, especially solopreneur, is with your clients,
Right.
acknowledging them. As a coach, that's our number one thing, is to acknowledge them. And so to add this in there, and you know what, I kind of forgot about this for clients. Just talking about it now is really figuring out how they want to communicate and what is meaningful to them, is really really important.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, it's so funny. It does feel like, as a coach, it's like my number one job is to like be pumping them up and making them, see their brilliance, right? And a lot of the times that I do that is with words of affirmation, because that's a lot of the coach relationship. But also knowing how people maybe do like it, maybe they do need quality time and they need a little bit more time on coaching calls or whatnot, and just really feeling it's appropriate with your specific boundaries as well around your work.
Exactly, exactly. But no, this book was really important to me, and I still love it. And it's always nice to revisit it. And it's one of those books that you can just open it up to any page and get golden nuggets out of it. I always like books like that where you can just open a chapter and just get so much out of it. But yeah, I'm curious. Do you have any idea what your love language is?
Oh, I know. My love languages are quality time and acts of service. So,
Hmm.
like, when someone offers to do something for me, I love that. And quality time. I was always, and I look back at my corporate career, I did not know anything about the love languages or languages of appreciation in that moment, but I was always a social butterfly, talking to everyone, spending time with people, getting to know them, like, and all of that. And maybe I was pestering for some people, but to me, the relationships were always very, very important.
Yeah, I
How about
know,
you?
yeah, words of affirmation and acts of service. I
Yeah.
have to say it's been really interesting for me because having lived alone for a number of years, and then I have a friend of mine who's moved in because she's in transition. She sold her place, and she is an acts of service person.
Mm.
And to wake up in the morning and have someone have a smoothie out for you for breakfast, or just really looking out and always checking in on me, it's just it warms my heart so much. And when you've been away from it for so long, it's like I didn't realize how much I craved it, and how much it's really, we're very aware of what's important to us. So it works really well. And we were both laughing because I said when she finally finds land and moves out, I'm going to be really depressed.
It'll be an adjustment, it sounds like. It's nice
It
to have
is.
someone super thoughtful and, like, thinking of you and, just valuing the relationship. I think that's the other thing about this book is, like, the realization of our work relationships are just as important as our personal relationships. They are our personal relationships.
They are, and even as an entrepreneur, my networking groups, the
Yeah.
people who I have met, the people who I talk to every day, they are my family, and I treat them as such. And I try to go out of my way, and do as much as I can to be of service, and to acknowledge them whenever I can, whenever I see someone doing something good. I don't know
I
if my
can
dog is barking.
It's
Really.
okay. It happens. That's what happens.
My roommate must be home.
I love it. Well, Lisa, I super appreciate you for bringing up this book to our attention. I think it's valuable and I appreciate your insights about it and doing this podcast with me. And this has just been, I think this is a great episode and a great time to, wrap it up. So, did you want to talk
Absolutely.
about the book that we're going to be talking about next month, rather?
Yes. So next month is my business partner, Kevin Martin. And Kevin Martin is one of the top hypnotists in the country. He's award winning, and he's also a top, he's got his master practitioner in neuro linguistic programming, NLP, also known as. And we work together a lot on the subconscious mind. And so it's this book, Living Your Dream Life, simply by changing your perceptions. And he goes into the idea of, what are your belief systems and goal setting, and really going into deep around your belief systems. It's a really great book, and it's a great book to use, especially if you're a coach. It kind of outlines a lot of things about people's mindset. So I'm really excited to interview him. He has an amazing story of how he became a hypnotherapist and an NLP practitioner. It saved his son's life.
Wow, that's pretty profound.
It's really
So,
profound.
yeah, I'm excited. So we'll both be here next month and we'll be interviewing Kevin Martin. And again, the name of that book is Living Your Dream Life: Simplify by Changing Your Perceptions by Kevin Martin. And so we'd love to see you live. We'd love to hear your comments. If you want to read the book, follow along. We'd love to have that conversation with you. And we will be back here on Tuesday, March 15th at 7 p.m. Eastern again. So, thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you for your brilliance and sharing it with me and our audience. And our audience, we're so grateful for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to either one of us on Facebook, probably the best way. You can go find us on theeaseofbusiness.com, I believe is the website. I'm always like, is that
I
the
think
website?
I think
Yes,
that's it.
theeaseofbusiness.com. Whew, I always have to check. Um, but with that, do you have anything else you want to add, Lisa?
No, again, I am always grateful to be talking to you and spreading the word about great books that will help people in life.
I
and
love
in
it.
business. Yes.
Yes. We love helping you move forward faster in life and business through amazing books that have helped us. So thank you so much, and we will see you next month.
Thank you.
This has been the Ease of Business podcast for enlightened entrepreneurs, hosted by Lisa Schermerhorn and Celeste Hartwell. Thank you so much for joining us. You can find us at theeaseofbusiness.com, on our Facebook page, and on YouTube at the Ease of Business podcast. We stream live on YouTube and Facebook every third Tuesday of the month. And we'd love it if you'd like to read the book that we're doing next and join in the conversation live at 7 p.m. Eastern.